In his book Death and Inside Story, Sadhguru talked about his previous life. He said, "There are any number of lifetimes which are there in my memory, but I don't pay attention to any of that. I have a piece of life in Zambia, for example, but I pay attention only to that which has been spiritually significant in some way. The rest of it is of no consequence. There are many things around me today which are a legacy of my past, but I have carried only those things which are of spiritual significance. Who my mother was, who my father was, who my brothers were, who my sisters were, who my children were, in all those past lives, I can pursue them very easily. But I will not. I have not even paid any attention to them. Only those who were with me in spirit, not in flesh or blood, I nurture them. Those who were with me in flesh and blood, I leave them to the earth, because it is to the earth that they belong. In that sense, I consider only my last 4 lifetimes significant." Vilva. In the early 1600s, there lived a young man in a small village, the present-day city of Raigara, in the central Indian state of Chittagra. His name was Vilva. He was a wise man who lived a wild and intense life. There is a certain tradition in India where some people call the Budu Budukku. Just walk through the street, usually very early in the morning when it is still dark. They wake you up with their drum beats. Intuitively, if they say something, they will tell you. They may say, for example, that death will occur in such and such house in 2 weeks' time, or someone will fall ill somewhere, and so on. Generally, people paid attention to those spontaneous utterances because they were known to come true. If nothing come to them that day, they would simply sing song in praise of Shiva. After this, they would go and sit in a temple for some time, where people would go and make some offering to them. This was a tradition within the Saiva culture, where this particular tribe of people is also involved in snake charming. Snake and Shiva are deeply connected. Bilva belonged to a tribe like that. Bilva was deeply in love with what he was doing. There was people who lived totally, loving life for what it is. They were not the kind to accumulate anything. They had no sense of money, property or possession. They simply lived, and Shiva was most important aspect of their life. Bilva loved snake. Mind you, snakes are generally poisonous creature. If you are a kind of who loves poisonous creature, you have to be a different kind of person. To kiss a snake, you must be very courageous. He was a person for whom love meant everything, the rest was secondary. Being alive itself was secondary. That is the kind of person he was. He was someone who could not fit into the social structure and looked upon as rebel. For one of the many rebellious acts he did, not respecting the prevalent caste distinction, he was put to death at a very early age by a cobra's bite while he was tied to a tree. At that time, he could not really call him a spiritual person. He was a devotee of Shiva, but during the last few moments of his life, he watched his breath. There was nothing else he could do, and breath watching just happened. The cobra venom entered his body and his breathing became labored. Death was just a few minutes away. During this time, he watched his breath. It was more of a consequence than a conscious awareness. Bitten by a cobra and left to die, he was lying face down, almost dead, yet he managed to be aware of those last few minutes of life. This was more out of grace rather than any sadhana. From those few minutes of breath watching, a new spiritual process began, which changed that person's future in so many ways. Shiva Yogi. In his next 2 lifetimes, he was a very intense seeker of ultimate nature. Shiva was his way. Both the times he was known as Shiva Yogi. In the first life of sadhana, he died at the age of 37. He had no disease, just hunger, and the intensity of his sadhana did him in. He did not die enlightened, but he died in full dignity. He died not screaming, yelling or crying, but just trying to do sadhana, to be meditative and die. The second time over, he fared better. He lived up to 55 years of age. He went through heartbreaking sadhana, but still final realization had not happened. At that point, he was bestowed the ultimate grace. Usually I don't talk about my guru. He was called Sri Palani and was a being beyond proportion. That was not his real name, but he was so called because he had attained to a certain samadhi state near the town of Palani in Tamil Nadu. He remained in the state for about 2.5 years. After that, he wandered all over the country, enlightening many people. He came to Shiva Yogi in the second lifetime and bestowed his grace upon him, a forlorn sadhaka. When this Shiva Yogi saw him, he recognized that was the Guru. Until then, he would not accept any human being as his Guru. For him, Shiva was the only Guru. He wanted Shiva to come and initiate him, but when he sees Sri Palani Swami, he recognized that this being was at the very peak of consciousness and he offered himself. But somewhere there was still a little resistance because he could not offer himself to another man. He would only offer himself totally to a Shiva. So the Guru, out of compassion, took the form of Shiva himself. Shiva Yogi surrendered. Sri Palani Swami did not even touch him with his hand or foot. He just took his stick and tapped on Shiva Yogi's Agna Chakra or forehead. At that moment, Shiva Yogi attained to its ultimate nature. This contact with the Guru lasted only a few hours. After that, they never met again, but they were constantly in touch. Sri Palani Swami attained Mahasamadhi in the Vilangiri mountains. Somehow, he identified Shiva Yogi as a person suitable for establishing the Dhanalinga, and he entrusted this work to him. Not in his speech, not in words, but wordlessly he communicated the immense technology needed to consecrate the Dhanalinga. So Shiva Yogi began walking towards establishing the Dhanalinga. He was not able to fulfill his Guru's vision in that lifetime because of limited resources and lack of support. So the rest of in that lifetime, he spent mostly with his eyes closed. Sadhguru Sri Brahma. To continue the work of creating the Dhanalinga, Shiva Yogi came back as Sadhguru Sri Brahma. He started the work towards this in Tamil Nadu. He traveled extensively in the state and established several small institutions, but his work on the Dhanalinga was centered around Coimbatore. Here he faced a lot of social resistance from people, as the Dhanalinga is the highest manifestation of the divine. It includes all aspects of manifestation of life. So consecrating it involves men and women in very intense processes. If a man and woman sit together, people can only think of one thing. So a lot of resistance come up and he was literally hounded out of the place. He became very angry that he could not fulfill his Guru's will and left Coimbatore in great fury, as if on fire. Those were the worst time of Sadhguru Sri Brahma's life, but in some way the best come out of that time. After lifetimes of sadhana and then fired by a phenomenal grace of a Guru, he was quite sure that he set out to do would happen, but he burned with fury because it was robbed away from him by a very ordinary and mediocre people, whom he had underestimated. He realized that the power of ignorance is never to be underestimated. It is very powerful and the world is ruled by it most of the time. You think your knowledge, your fire, your enlightenment will do things, but the enlightened are always an individual. The ignorant are in masses. There is huge power to that. He did not do the cold calculation necessary to work in the world. Not because he was incapable of it, he did not do it simply because he thought his fire and his knowing would carry. But that is not how the world always works. The material aspect of the world, the human beings of the different kind, need to be handled as it is fit. Otherwise it will not work. And this is a wonderful lesson for everyone. A lesson I have not forgotten even for a moment in my life. Even if you carry the divine light within you, there will still be darkness behind you. So unless you have created a lot of small lights behind you, you need to constantly turn back and check what is happening. Sadhguru Sri Brahma was alone, There was people here and there, but he had lit up, but he did not like anyone following him, so he was alone. Because he was alone, behind him there was darkness, and it followed him and did not allow him to fulfill the purpose of his life. This is a good lesson for anyone, even such a magnificent human being as Sadhguru Sri Brahma, who could do things which are not considered human or humanly possible, could not fulfill what he came for. And it does not matter how many things you do, if you cannot fulfill the purpose that you have stood up for, that is considered as failure. Sadhguru Sri Brahma failed and he did not like it. He did not like it one bit, so knowing the only emotion that he knew, he got angry. He was always angry, not about anything or anyone, but anger was his vehicle for intense existence. In that anger, he started to walk in no particular direction. Seeing his fierceness, no one was able to go near him except for one disciple by the name of Vibhuti who followed him. Sadhguru Sri Brahma walked without stopping to eat, sleep or even sit for 3, 4, 5 days. During this time, the disciple would follow him, try to gauge in which direction the master was going, cook food and run to reach him and place the food in front of him. Step aside and wait in the hope that he would eat. Where would he walk? He eventually began walking in the direction where the scent of grace for him was. Walked towards the town of Kadapa. In the state of Andhra Pradesh, initially when he set out, he did not even think where he was going. He was just walking blindly to cool his head a bit, but invariably he went in that direction where there is a temple in Kadapa, where Sri Palaniswami himself had spent a lot of time. Probably it was reconsecrated by him. So Sadhguru Sri Brahma went in that direction. When he finally reached the temple in Kadapa, his anger had still not subsided. Even after 4 or 5 months, he was still angry. No one could go near Sri Brahma and his disciple. It is not that they did anything or harmed anyone, but they were so fierce, fiercer than wild animals. Even if they were only sitting, no one wanted to go near them. Within a few days, all the priests of the temple left, as they could not stay there because of intensity of that being. Sadhguru Sri Brahma knew that he did not have much time. He knew that because of certain karmic limitation, he would have to leave his body within the next 2 years, when his head got a little cooler and when he was able to put down the shame and resentment of failure a little bit. He settled down to make some very cold calculation. From being a fiery, exuberant, don't care a devil kind of yogi, he came down to being a cold calculation, a highly pragmatic, controlled fire. He sat down with his disciple and plotted how to make the Dhanalinga happen in the next life. Many things were decided there. Who should be involved in the consecration process, where they should be born, in which womb, how and at what time. He plotted every aspect of that would be needed and determined a solution for many issues that would impede. Sadhguru Sri Brahma even decided what kind of person he would be born as, how his physical body and state of mind should be. Everything was created right there. The fundamental blueprint for that Dhanalinga was made in that Kadapa temple. Sadhguru Sri Brahma then come back to Coimbatore for the last time. He was heading up to Bilangiri mountains, which was considered his Guru's Samadhi. There were many people gathered at the foothills that day. To them, he declared, "This one will be back." Now Sadhguru Sri Brahma was supercharged with failure, and having been unable to fulfill his Guru's will, he executed an extremely rare feat of exiting through the 7 chakras all at once. He was one of the very few masters who had mastery over all the 7 chakras and was referred to as Chakraswara. He was only 42 years old at that time. He did these phenomenally rare things as a preparation for the consecration of the Dhanalinga. Though he knew his failure was that of mismanagement of social situations, he was ascertaining for himself that it was not a lapse of his own ability. Exiting the body through all the 7 chakras meant that person had complete mastery over all the 114 chakras. It is because of that mastery that now we can have people blowing up everywhere and intense experience like explosions. He chose the peak of Bilangiri mountains for the incredible feat, as his Guru Samadhi was these mountains. It was in the lap of his masters, thus he assured himself that the next time around there would be no failure or miss-it. Even today, this place where he attained Samadhi and said his body exists, it is very vibrant, it pulsates with energy. People who go there can feel it and experience it. The quality of this place at the top of the 7th hill, just at the edge of the mountain, where chilly wild winds blow constantly, says everything about this man. This is where he felt most comfortable because it is a very powerful spot. If you are a meditator, you are a little sensitive. When you go there, you will go crazy. It is like that because he left them with certain purpose. He has a certain purpose to fulfill, so he left in particular way. It is not just about liberation and dissolution. He used his energy and even his death for the future establishment of or manifestation of how he wanted to be. Before Sadhguru Sri Brahma shed the body, he made one more futile attempt to achieve the work he had started. A certain yogi in central India had left his body at the age of 26. He was Bala Yogi who had attained self-realization at the age of 11. This yogi spent about 3.5 years in Samadhi. When he came out, he was eager to share his experience. But he only found 5 or 6 disciples to impart it to. Even they were not sincere enough, so he got angry and he left his body. Sadhguru Sri Brahma immediately took hold to this Bala Yogi body and tried to fulfill his purpose through it. He did this because he had no patience to be born again and go through the process of life all over again. For a few months, Sadhguru Sri Brahma was in 2 different physical bodies at the same time. In this attempt to create the Dhanalinga, he gathered a few disciples around him and tried working with them with tremendous intensity. Because the time span available was very limited, when people did not meet his expectation, he chose to shelve the effort and depart with the declaration, "This one will be back again."